Welcome to this Career Catapult session on men's mental health. And I'm joined today by Alex Blake. And Alex is a mental health speaker and also a mindset coach. And he set up a business called P.M.A, obviously, Positive Mental Attitude, obviously. Great name. Welcome, Alex.
Welcome to me. Why do I say welcome? How are you doing, James?
Welcome yourself. That's absolutely fine. Look, I ought to point out to the listeners that Alex has given me complete carte blanche on what I can ask him. He said there are no questions that are off limits. So thank you, Alex. I really appreciate that. So if I can start off with then, Alex, so you said about 10 years ago, you were due to leave college at that time and you started suffering with depression at that point. Tell me a bit more about what was going on in your life at that stage.
So it's probably been a good 10 years I've kind of really struggled with depression. I think it was around the time where I was leaving college and having to make decisions about what I want to do with the rest of my life. So whether I wanted to go to further education, get a job, but I didn't know what career or what I wanted to do. And it just became a thought that wouldn't leave me, is what do you want to do with your life? And it just became a bit of an obsession and consumed me, I suppose. But it just became difficult to then, even little things like being in social situations with friends, I was always thinking about my career and I couldn't get away from that or escape it. And it just kind of had a knock-on effect with everything and just kind of built up to get worse over the years, basically.
It's a big stage in people's lives, actually, isn't it? That kind of career, where do I go next? I've got to enter the big wide world.
Yeah.
Can't rely on education anymore. So yeah, it's an interesting
Exactly.
time.
Yeah.
But then in 2016, I understand that was a pretty dark time for you. Could you tell me a bit about what happened at that stage, please?
Yeah. So this is a fast forward of obviously 6 years. So I was in the working world in a career that I found quite stressful. So I eventually had, I guess, wanted to start again. So I ended up applying and going to University of Brighton to do a completely different course or industry, I guess, in teaching. But it basically became something that, again, I overthought about. And I ended up thinking myself out of, I guess, teaching a class and being so scared of being in front of children with my mental health. Not that they could see anything, but I knew deep down I was petrified. It got to the point where I had to leave university my first year. Although I was doing okay with the grades wise, I just wasn't coping mentally. So I had to put it on hold and left for personal reasons. And in the end, with the idea I was never going to go back. So I actually then started a new complete career again in finance, which I'd never done before. All the while obviously dealing with my own insecurities, I guess, and stuff. And it was only 2 weeks into the start of the career, I basically made an attempt to take my own life. And it was basically a build-up of about 2-3 months worth of just hell, I guess, that I just couldn't see a way out. Wasn't sleeping, couldn't talk to anyone, couldn't hold a conversation, make eye contact or anything. I was just so stuck in my own head. It was just, that was the lowest point in my life. It was hell. And I guess I just had to take it, not even day by day, but like hour by hour almost, just to kind of get through it. So yeah, it was a difficult time.
So on the build up to that point, friends and family, would there been any signs to them that you were getting that low?
I think, yeah, that's where it's difficult. It's because obviously it's an invisible illness, I guess. Unless you kind of talk about it, people that maybe have depression or other mental health issues for a long, prolonged period of time, they get really good at hiding it. So even just like a smile or a laugh or deflecting the conversation onto someone else, you're taking away from how you're feeling. And that's what I used to do all the time. I just became so good at hiding it. I'd be one person with people, and as soon as I would shut the door to go on my own, I'd be like act over kind of thing. And it was just, yeah, I guess they didn't really know how bad it got. They could probably see I was struggling a little bit, but just thought I was having a bad day or whatever.
Yeah, interesting. So when you made that attempt, was it at that point that you then had the formal diagnosis of bipolar?
So that was actually, I think, 6 or 7 months later, so quite a while. Wow. So that basically it was, to cut a long story short, my mum saved my life, basically. I ended up going to the doctors that night and being prescribed medication. And it was basically a trial and error a few months later of different medications, talking therapies, etc. And then one of the medications I got put on then made me skyrocket, like made me go completely high. And I think as well as that, where I'd been so low, and then I thought, oh, actually, I'm still here. It was a thought of, oh, I'm going to live life to the full now. I'm going to just do everything I want to do. And at the time, it was obviously, I suppose, fun. But the dangerous side of bipolar, I guess, the mania side is you're very like spontaneous, out of control, spend money you don't have, make stupid decisions and stuff. So it was actually in October 2016 where I was, just no one could handle me. I was mood swings, aggressive, and everything. And it was only then I went to a doctor a few times, and they eventually said, oh, "We think you've got bipolar," and it kind of went from there.
And do you think it was all the stresses that you'd experienced previously that built up to that? Because there's lots of reasons for bipolar, aren't there? Obviously, there's the chemical imbalance in the brain, but also they say it can be triggered by certain events. Do you think there was an event that triggered it?
I think as probably just a build up over time, and where I kind of was so depressed for so many months, even years, kind of the release of just, I think I managed to open up on social media a few months after my attempt, and I got so much like love and support from people that I'd never even heard of almost, that it was just overwhelming. And I was like, well, actually, this was obviously 5 years ago now, so I had this idea then of doing the business. And then I just thought, because it was just such a release and escape, I was happy. Like, although it was a kind of happy that was not natural, if that makes sense. Like, it was just still a bit forced, and I still had all my issues, but I was just kind of just so elevated that I was just trying to focus on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and nice to know, I guess, as well, that there was almost like a label that you could associate with and understand. Would that make sense?
Yeah, that's perfectly put. I think when I got diagnosed by the doctor for cerebral bipolar, I was hysterical, just with like happy tears, because I actually knew there was a problem. Because I'd never really got diagnosed with depression or anything before that, so it was just the bipolar was kind of all in one. So obviously there are parts of depression, parts of mania, and I think depression and anxiety kind of go hand in hand as well, like the overthinking and stuff. And having that diagnosis, literally was like, okay, now I've got a problem, I can address it and eventually get better.
Yeah, interesting. Now, one thing I need to get straight here.
Yeah.
With bipolar, would you call it a mental health illness, a condition, or a disability? Because there's lots of discussion around this. What, as somebody who suffers, what would you call it?
I would say it's an illness, like a mental health illness. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it's a disability or condition, because I think that they still summarize it correctly.
Yeah.
Because there's something wrong with you in a way. It's just that it's not a physical, you broke your arm. It's just something wrong with your brain, basically.
Yeah, and therefore hard for people to see.
Yeah.
Let's talk about work then, because you do have a successful career. So tell me, how does having bipolar impact you at work?
I think it does impact me. I think now I've got it under much more control and it's more manageable. I think, an advantage in a way, because my mind is kind of going so fast. Anytime I'm not speaking, I'm just thinking all these different thoughts. So I can kind of work quite quickly and pay attention to detail and things like that. And like, I hate making mistakes and things like that. So in that way, like, I think my performance is quite good. But I can get distracted quite easily, and I just go with the flow a little bit. And as soon as a conversation, say in the office when we're not working from home, I kind of it just takes the slightest thing and I'm off task, and it takes like half an hour for me to get back on it, kind of thing. But I think it has its good and bad things. Like, if I am actually on task, I can work quite quickly and get quite a lot done because I'm going at quite a fast pace. But yeah, it's just managing it basically, so it doesn't like take over in a bad way, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess quite useful in kind of brainstorming sessions, team discussions, because you're probably thinking of ideas with that.
Yeah, just get kind of loads of ideas just instantly, because just always thinking.
That's incredible. Actually, I didn't realize that. It's amazing. And what about outside of work? So how has it impacted home and friendships?
Yeah, I think when I was going through like my big manic stage, there was definitely tension between my close family and close friends. And they almost had to just let me do my own thing for a couple of months until I kind of calmed down, because I wasn't listening to them basically. I had my like tunnel vision of what I was going to do. And there was kind of like a lot of arguments and stuff where they were seeing a new side to me they'd never seen before. And I think I just didn't want to be on my own so much that as soon as I was I don't know, at home alone or whatever, I just couldn't deal with my own thoughts, I guess. So I just had to constantly distract myself and be happy, or be focused on something that I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking, kind of thing. But I think now, like years later, where it's a lot more I'm in control kind of thing, the relationship has kind of got better because I've kind of opened up my friends' minds to the illness. So if anyone else has a similar thing, they're going to be a bit more easy to open up about it, I think, hopefully.
That's really interesting. So do you think your circle of friends now are a lot more open about how they're feeling as a result of you being
Yeah,
open about what you're
I
going
think so.
through?
Yeah, I think a few of them have spoke to me at different times, saying that if they were in a bad place or have been, they would be much more comfortable talking about it because it's not such a big thing. Because I've just shown that it's not that bad. And obviously, it is bad, I guess. But once you can actually have the courage to talk about it, especially men that seem to want to just bottle it up a bit more, once you can get that first bit out of the way of actually verbalizing it, it just becomes obviously difficult, but easier over time.
Yeah. And why do you think men do bottle it up? Why do we find it so difficult to talk about these things?
I think it's just the kind of culture we're in, where I guess if you when I like observe people, I guess when I say that observe the females in the office, they just love a natter, I guess, or talk about whatever. But men are a lot more closed, just in general. I think they're seen as, especially in the olden times, I guess, would be the more people they're the man of the house, got to bring the money in, just fix up, do everything, and just get it done, and not have any problems. So I think that kind of culture of building up years on years just led to not having to show like emotion or weakness through fear of not being seen as a man, I guess, or something along those
Well,
kind of
there's the
lines.
phrase "man up," isn't there?
Yeah,
Of course, as well.
exactly, exactly. So it's difficult. I think now there is a lot more in on like social media and stuff on mental health, and people are becoming more open about it. I think obviously social media is one thing, but it's in real life is obviously where it's got to kind of change as well.
Yeah, of course. So since your diagnosis then and up until today, what treatment and what support have you been given that's really helped you?
So I've tried so many things. So I started with kind of like CBT therapy.
Mm.
Obviously, I've had like a little bit of counselling. I went to like a bipolar group where there was other people with bipolar, just having conversations and stuff. I tried counselling over the phone. I just tried to distract myself in like the career, writing, keeping a journal, just so many different things that I guess it's not like a one fits all kind of thing. Like you just got to kind of find what works for you. I think long term I was adamant I didn't want to kind of be getting counselled, I guess, forever. Or obviously the other big one was medication, which I've tried like kind of 5 different types.
Wow.
And I was adamant that long term, if I was got my path sorted or something I wanted to do, I would be able to live a good normal life without medication or counselling.
Mm.
So that's what I'm kind of focusing on long term, I guess.
So one of the things that I heard you mention in one of your other videos actually is during your darkest times, you were having these thoughts that everything is pointless.
Yeah,
Your attitude to almost everything was that's pointless. What's the point
yeah,
of doing that?
yeah.
How have you overcome that? What's the process you've gone through
Yeah,
there?
that is obviously something that's affecting for so many years. And it was just like I could, even when I was doing things I liked, like playing sport, I was like, "What's the point? It's going to finish soon. I'm just going to go back to being miserable or whatever." I think over time, I just kind of try and take it one day at a time. And if there was the odd, like, say, song that came on that I really connected with, or one of my friends made me laugh, it was like in that split second, I was just in the moment and not worrying about anything. And over time, you kind of realize that even if to some people it can be life is pointless, it's like, well, okay, if it is, then we're still here, so just enjoy it, kind of thing, and just take everything as it is, and try not to stress too much about the future or worry about the past. I think over time you can just kind of build it up to just flip it to a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah, and I heard you mention that everything is worthwhile. There's a reason behind everything. So just trying to live for the moment a bit more, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at it that way, life does become a lot more fun because obviously there's no denying life is difficult. Obviously you're always constantly on the move and having to meet deadlines or do things, make food, etc. But if you can kind of enjoy it along the way, it's going to be a lot easier to handle, I guess.
Yeah, of course. It's a really interesting point. What advice would you give then to employers or line managers about how they can best support or even accommodate people with mental health illnesses?
Yeah, I think the first thing is it's difficult that employees might be worried about reaching out to their management through fear of like losing their job or essentially getting taken work off them, etc.
Yeah.
But I think if management can maybe set time aside to even just email the employee to say one on one, did you want to have a lunch with me somewhere and just to talk about stuff that doesn't have to be work related? So that's always going to build morale as well and build a bit of trust and stuff between them. And they can obviously just
Accessibility right
yeah,
from the get go, really. Yeah.
yeah. And like if you're just talking like off record almost just as a friend to a friend kind of thing, obviously you've got to be formal and professional still. But it can help to just be honest. And if you are maybe just getting bombarded with work for maybe just a week or so, just by having that conversation, they can maybe delegate it just to help you out for that week, and it can ease your load and ease your stress and stuff. So I think the main thing is just offering the help or support to let them know it's there if they need it, rather than saying you have to do it. The option's there if you want to reach out and speak to us about what's on your mind.
Kind of breaking down those barriers, the hierarchical
Yeah,
barriers that you
yeah,
can't discuss that kind of stuff with your manager.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where so many people are signed off sick with depression or have loads like high stress or look for other jobs because they're so stressed at the massive workloads and they feel they can't talk to their management about
Yeah.
it.
It shouldn't get to that point ultimately, should it?
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about the business that you've set up.
So yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it was a kind of a thought. It pretty much started from the attempt back in March 2016. I was like, now I know I can't kind of do this because of my family. Basically, I had to set a long-term goal of what's going to keep me kind of going, but I still knew I wasn't mentally right. So once I kind of recovered, I was basically in a position where once I know I'm okay myself, I want to be able to help people in whichever way I can. So I thought I can set up this business basically and go into schools, colleges, universities, workplaces, and just talk on different subjects around it, on just things that I've kind of learned along the way, diplomas I've kind of studied in lockdown to get kind of a bit more knowledge around it, and just kind of give insights to help people so they don't end up in the same position as me.
And what
Um,
areas do you specialize in?
so the main things I kind of cover off with employees is managing stress in the workplace, building resilience, creating a positive mindset. And then with like students and stuff, I do pretty much a similar thing, but also suicide prevention. So just having the conversation, I think being vulnerable myself kind of hopefully connect with people that they can then share themselves, because I think, well, if I've done it, they can do it too, kind of thing. So yeah, I found a bit of power in that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. Good for you. Really great initiative to set up, actually.
Yeah, I sort of thought like last year in pandemic, it was kind of needed now more than ever, I guess.
Well, I was just going to ask about that. So, the
Yeah,
last year, for a lot of people, a lot of us have been struggling with that for a number of reasons: the isolation,
yeah,
being on furlough,
yeah.
being out of work, a number of reasons. So, what advice would you give to anybody who's struggling, I guess, because of
Yeah.
those things?
I think it's just finding things each day that you're going to enjoy. So obviously it's different for everyone, but if you can obviously plan in breaks of like even 5-10 minutes throughout the day, if you're working from home or you're on furlough, do things you're going to enjoy. So go for a walk, listen to music or a podcast, connect with your family and friends over technology if you can. I don't know, read a book or learn something new. Online courses you could potentially do. There's a lot of things we can do even in a lockdown that are going to keep us stimulated, I guess. And it's just finding what works for you.
So it's kind of intentional things, isn't it? Really making
Yeah,
real effort to make sure there are some things you're doing every day, I guess, in some
yeah,
way to bring out some enjoyment and to develop
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Because I think like, it's all fine just watching Netflix, I guess. But for me personally, when I'm sat idle too long, I just think, so I can't even concentrate on what I'm
Yeah.
watching. I need to keep busy, but I know everyone's different. But it's just finding what works for you, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's really useful advice. Thank you.
That's
And what
okay.
about you then? So, what are your long-term goals or your dreams?
Yeah, good question. So basically, long term, I want to do this P.M.A stuff full time and eventually be a professional speaker. That's my kind of plan. Obviously, you had in my head before that to be a speaker, you have to be a comedian, for example. But there's obviously so many different variations of speakers. But I just want to speak to bigger audiences about mental health and just kind of raise awareness and just if I could help one person in a crowd, and that's worth doing, kind of thing. And if I could speak to big audience, I can reach out to more people, and more people I can help that maybe have had these silent battles for years. And yeah, the long-term plan is just to spread the word and travel and hopefully help people.
Good for you. Yeah, and the travel bit would be nice as well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. When we're actually allowed to, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I ought to point out that Alex has got a number of resources on his website, as well as a YouTube channel with some really useful videos. So there'll be a download that you can see all the different ways to reach out and get in touch with Alex. But I just want to say a big thank you. I think you are an inspiration, and the advice that you've given, I'm sure, will help many people. All the best with
Thank you,
your
James.
goals.
I appreciate it, James. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks very much.
Very welcome. Thank you.